Yet another intruder broke into my house this week. It's not right for the president to provide protection for his family and political favorites while denying it to his political rivals.
What in the hell is Joe Biden thinking? Does Joe Biden want Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dead? Now, I know that's a provocative question. Well, I'm going to lay out the facts to you, and I'll let you decide. Because the fact of the matter is, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is now running as an independent candidate for president, has been begging for Secret Service protection. And let's face it, his last name is Kennedy. His uncle was the president of the United States and was assassinated in Dallas in 1963. His father in 1968 was on his way to claiming the Democratic nomination for president, and he was assassinated in Los Angeles. There's a thing about Kennedys here when they have a public profile and they're running for office that maybe, just maybe, we should pause and recognize. And the fact that he is right now polling anywhere between 10 and 20% in national and statewide polls tells you on the face of it, regardless of his last name, that he is potentially a major candidate who would make a difference and maybe even has a shot at the White House. Nikki Haley had Secret Service protection and she was never close to getting the nomination. And he's been asking for this protection, and Joe Biden and his Department of Homeland Security continue to deny him. Earlier today, he took to the social media platform X to deliver this message about a harrowing situation that happened in his home because he doesn't have Secret Service protection.
Hey, everybody, you might have heard that yet another intruder broke into my house this week and then returned to my house again shortly after the police released him. Last month, an armed gunman using falsified U.S. Marshal badges and phony federal ID and carrying an arsenal in his backpack tried to approach me at a speech in Los Angeles, a short distance from where my dad was assassinated. I don't want to make too big a deal of it, except that it highlights the need for Secret Service protection. Every presidential candidate since the 1970s who's asked for Secret Service protection has received it, including my uncle, Edward Kennedy, Walter Mondale, John Glenn, Gary Hart, George McGovern, Bill Clinton, George Bush, John Kerry, Mitt Romney, Bernie Sanders, and many, many others. They've all received early Secret Service protection. Barack Obama received protection almost 2 years before the election. However, President Biden has made the historic decision to deny me a Secret Service detail. I'm the only one in history whose request has ever been denied. I don't spend time worrying about my personal safety, but I do worry about the safety of my family and their sense of well-being, and about the safety of bystanders if there happens to be a more serious incident. I'm troubled mostly by the weaponization of federal law enforcement agencies to serve political agendas. It's not right for the president to provide protection for his family and political favorites while denying it to his political rivals. You can't have a functioning democracy when candidates aren't safe. Elections and not assassinations are supposed to decide who takes office in America. In its threat assessment, the Secret Service concluded that I am at an elevated risk. The decision, therefore, to deny me protection was a naked political calculation. During his first week as Attorney General, my father assembled all the Department of Justice senior prosecutors to tell them that he would not tolerate any politicization of law enforcement. President Biden displays a bust of my father in the Oval Office, but he seems to have forgotten this critical tenet of American democracy. I'm reaching out to you today to help send a message to the Biden White House. The time has come for public pressure to make the White House do the right thing. That's why I'm asking you to sign a petition to President Biden, calling on him to grant me Secret Service protection. Even if you don't support my candidacy, I ask you to sign this petition to protect me, to protect the public, and most of all, to protect our democracy. Thanks for taking time to do that.
Yeah. And so, I mean, listen, he made a very compelling case. I would like to add a few more thoughts to it, though, because you got to ask yourself, what is the rationale here? Why is the Biden administration reluctant to provide Secret Service protection for Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? Are they trying to force him out of the race? Is this a political move? It's certainly not based on any logic. Oh, by the way, why aren't people pressed on this? Why is Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, not asked about this on a daily basis by reporters? Why aren't they camping out in front of his office or his home to demand an answer on this? Where is the media asking questions? Again, this says I don't support Robert F. Kennedy. I don't want him anywhere near the White House. My God, the guy's a crazy left-wing activist. That's the last thing I want for a president. But this is about right and wrong. And listen, I respect and admire the fact that he frames this entire discussion in, listen, I'm not worried about myself, but I do worry about my family and my bystanders. No. I worry about the electoral process. I worry about the dignity and security of the process we utilize to choose our leaders. That's what we should be worried about here. This is, in fact, not about Robert F. Kennedy Jr. This is about us, the American people. Just like in the security of our voting procedures in this country, we, the people, deserve a solid, corrupt-free process to use democracy to select our representatives at every level, especially president. And if, God forbid, something were to happen to Mr. Kennedy, that would upend the entire election, as it did with his father when he was assassinated in 1968 and never got to claim the nomination of the Democratic Party. That changed history. He wasn't the nominee yet. He was heading to the convention. It looked like he had the delegates. It was going to be close. Had he been the nominee against Richard Nixon instead of Hubert Humphrey, everything could have changed. I don't know if it would have been better or worse. It doesn't matter. That's what an assassination's bullet does. It doesn't just kill the individual, God forbid. It alters the course of history, and it affects all of us. That's why the Secret Service is there. Because our system of government and our democratic process of choosing our leaders needs to be protected so that our rights are protected. Now, we already know that Joe Biden loves politicizing law enforcement. We see that transpire every single day. And we also know that Democrats love interfering with elections so that they can have their way. So, again, I lay out the facts for you so you can decide one way or the other, what in the hell is Joe Biden thinking? Why would he continue to deny after all of those incidents that you just heard? And the same guy keeps coming in and intruding in his home, and another guy a few weeks ago did it. This isn't just sort of coming up and breaching against him when he's doing a public appearance at a hotel or a fundraiser or something. This is breaking into his house. Why doesn't he have Secret Service protection? Why wouldn't Joe Biden give him Secret Service protection? He spoke a little bit more about this last week with Sage Steele on her podcast here.
I'm the first candidate in history
Right.
that has requested Secret Service protection since my dad's death, which is when they gave it to everybody. And there's been 44. They have to give it to you 120 days out.
Okay.
But they've given it to 44 candidates, basically everybody. 200 days, 300 days. I think Obama got it 541 days out. Jesse Jackson, people with a tiny fraction of my polling. Shirley Chisholm, Pat Buchanan, got it a year out, etc. So I'm the first one that they've ever denied it to. That's
And did they ever give you a reason?
No.
What's your gut?
They'd say, I assume that it's a political decision. I know the Secret Service told them that I was at elevated risk. There was a 68-page report that was documenting all the death threats. The people who 4 people have broken into my house since I declared one of them, a mentally ill person who got to the second floor when my family was home. Another time, a man came with a lot of loaded pistols, shoulder holsters, and a backpack filled with weapons and magazines and fake U.S. Marshal ID, and tried to get into my green room and at a speech in Los Angeles with a lie. And he had fake federal enforcement agency
Wow.
ID. And luckily, one of my paid guys, Gavin DeBecker, looked at that badge and said that U.S. Marshal badge is a little too shiny. And they pulled him aside. And
So this is all being funded by you personally then? All your security is from you?
yeah, it's being funded by my campaign, but it's a lot of
Right.
money. It's like
Sure.
$1 million a month. And you asked me why.
$1 million a month.
Yeah, because you have to travel with people, and you have to pay airplane, and you have to pay you have to
Food, just
you have
everything.
cars,
Yeah.
at both ends, and you have to have hotels, and and it's a robust detail. So,
Sure.
but you asked me why I thought they were doing it, and I don't know because I can't look into their heads, but I assume they've made a decision that they would rather me spend that $1 million on, protecting myself than on advertising or field organizing or whatever. So I think it's cynical. The troubling part of it is that it's really the first time since Nixon that a president has politicized the U.S. enforcement agencies. We're seeing this not just with the Secret Service, but the CIA, the FBI,
Yeah.
CISA, NIH.
Yeah. That's possible. It's possible that Joe Biden just wants, it's a cynical ploy to make him spend money on his security. That's possible. Maybe. Again, I'll let you reach your own conclusions here. The fact is, even if he spends twice as much on his security every month, he is not going to get a security detail that is trained at the level of the Secret Service or has the resources that the Secret Service has, the infrastructure the Secret Service has, and the ability to protect him the way the Secret Service does, because that's all the Secret Service does. It's all they know how to do. It's all they've been trained to do. So it's always going to be less than compared to a Secret Service detail. That's just the obvious fact of the matter. So maybe it's a money play. Certainly possible. I will tell you this, the Biden administration has demonstrated, as he just laid out, that they won't shrink at politicizing any agency in the federal government that they control, whether it's the education department, as we see by politicizing Title IX and allowing men to be women in school, whether it's in sports or in a locker room or in a bathroom. They politicize the transportation department by having their secretary claim that bridges and overpasses were built because of racist reasons, and that contracts will be determined based on race and other reasons that they decide on their own, or for that matter, the pushing in the energy department of electric vehicles and Green New Deal agenda. I mean, all across the board, they politicize everything. And of course, the vaccines and the NIH and the heavy-handed approach during COVID and the vaccine mandates, plus the FBI and the Justice Department and the investigation of traditional Catholics who go to Latin Mass or parents who go to school board meetings. Time and time and time and time and time and time again, and not to mention the southern border and our asylum policies and illegal immigration. They warp the law, they distort reality, and they politicize every department of the federal government that they control. Why do you think suddenly they're not also politicizing the use of the Secret Service, even if it means potentially some harm might come to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.? I ask again, does Joe Biden want RFK Jr. dead? Because based on the behavior and the decision-making process, it's a reasonable conclusion to reach. It may not be the only conclusion, but it's certainly a reasonable conclusion to reach. Or maybe as these incidents continue to occur and his wife and his children and people around him continue to express terror that something might happen to him, that they're trying to force him out of the race. Oh, they don't want him dead. They just want him so scared to death that he gets out. Like Ross Perot did back in 92 when he thought that the CIA was going to disrupt his daughter's wedding. Remember that whole thing? Maybe he'll just clear out. Or maybe it's when Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is talking about this, it means it's time he's not spending talking about, all the things that Biden has done to ruin the country. All of these things are options. I'll show you one more thing that might help you make your decision here to reach the conclusion. Why does Joe Biden not want to give obvious Secret Service protection for a man who is experiencing a high level of threat right now? Take a look at this poll. New York Times, Philadelphia Inquirer, Siena poll. It's the newest poll. It just came out. And you can say in the five-way race, which is really the only poll that they shouldn't be doing Trump versus Biden head-to-head anymore. It should always be a five-way, which includes Kennedy, Jill Stein, and Cornel West. But in this case, they actually kept Stein and Cornel West linked into other there, and they broke out RFK Jr. in particular. Take a look at the first line, Nevada. Biden 27, RFK Jr. 12, Trump 41. I'll do the math for you. If RFK Jr. goes away, that's Biden 39, Trump 41. We're assuming here that he's drawing mostly from Joe Biden, which I think the polls show and bear that out. That if you're stuck with only choosing between Trump and Biden, you pick Biden, vast majority. But if you have Kennedy as an option, you go to Kennedy. Pennsylvania, Trump is beating Biden 40 to 36, but RFK Jr. is getting 10. You take RFK out, Biden wins 46 to 40. Arizona, same thing. Trump's winning 42 to 33. You throw that support from RFK Jr. over to Biden if RFK isn't a choice, and now suddenly Biden's in the lead, 43 to 42. Georgia, Trump 39, Biden 31. You give Biden the 9 points from RFK, and suddenly it's a dead heat, Biden with a slight edge. Michigan, even more stark. Trump up 38 to 36. It's close, but you throw those 9 points that RFK Jr. is getting, and it's a landslide for Biden. And Wisconsin, where they're tied, dead heat, 38-38. Again, 9 points RFK Jr. is getting, and suddenly Wisconsin is easily in Joe Biden's camp. Why is Joe Biden single-handedly deciding that RFK Jr. does not get Secret Service protection, despite incident after incident after incident, including a home invasion? Why? It's pretty simple when you look at the numbers. If RFK Jr. is taken out one way or the other, Joe Biden benefits bigly.